Well, we're back after a little bit of a hiatus. We're here on episode number 22 for the Rub Wrestling Podcast. So I hope you guys missed us. We missed you. We're dealing with a few things on the outs, a little bit of an illness, a whole lot of work coming into the back end of the schedule, but we're back, ready to rumble, and we're here for all your wrestling news, rumors, banter, anything you possibly think of. We're going to talk about a PLE today. We're going to talk about some gossiping in the news, and we're going to talk a little bit about drugs, because that's what we're going to do on this podcast today. Anyways, with us, remember, we do have an email address. You can hit us up at therubwrestling@outlook.com if you want to let us know about any questions that you have for the podcast or any rumors that you want us to discuss. We are there for that. You can also hit that follow or subscribe on many of the different areas where we can find a podcast. Basically, Google, Spotify. You can find us on YouTube. We're doing really well on YouTube. And you can also find us on Apple if you need us. But yeah, you can definitely find us and hit us up on Spotify if you want to hear it through your car radio. That's what I like to do in my time off, is listening to us and how great we are. But other than that, we do have our illustrious panel. I'm Matt, your host. We got Chris and Josh. Chris, a little bit of a crazy week. I heard you were a little bit under the weather. Are you feeling a little bit better?
Yeah, I'll tell you, when you get older and you start getting acid reflux and you have to sleep sitting up and you don't fall asleep for hours, then you dry heave and lose your voice. Yeah, it's great getting old. I can't wait to be 41 in just, 8-9 weeks maybe, which is fantastic. Do you want to know anything else about my week? Or?
Well, I think other than that, I just have a funny story to add. I ate at an illustrious pizza place in Sudbury, probably the most illustrious one. I'm not going to name in case we get slandered on the internet. But I basically crushed 3/4 of a large pizza to myself, and my mom had 2 slices when I was there over the course of 12 hours. And I went to bed, and I had the exact same thing. I had acid reflux so bad that I was coughing and almost choking and couldn't get it up. It was so bad. But other than that, I haven't had a bout since. So,
yeah, my job is talking on the phone. So once I dry heave and then can't talk the next day, it's not very comfortable. They all, "Are you sick?" I'm like, "No, just tell me why you quit your job." And I missed both of your radio faces.
Yeah, radio face. I'm actually for the first time without a beard in 4 years, and so I shaved it off. I woke up at 3 a.m. and looked in the mirror, and I scared the living shit out of myself. I'm like, "Who's that fucking ugly bastard in the mirror? What's going on?" And then I kind of looked.
Well, my wife.
Go ahead.
My wife would probably think I was robbing the cradle when we first started dating. I met her teacher friend, and I went to play catch with some guy I met. And the teacher said, "Is that one of your students?" She's like, "No, he's 35 years old."
Oh, shit. Josh, other than that, I've been hearing you've been crushing at work. You don't have to tell us our job or anything, but I hear you've been crushing and you've been doing things, and I saw some pictures of some great food you were eating all week. So when you were at your conference this week, what was the best dinner that you had out of all 5 days?
So I went to this Italian restaurant yesterday, and they have fresh homemade mozzarella and fresh pasta, and it's just a whole experience. We also went to, a steakhouse. It was good. We went to see Jagged Little Pill last night, the musical. It was all right. I like Alanis Morissette, but the story was interesting. It was not what I expected, but I thought it was good, so I was happy. It was nice to be out at a conference and hanging out with some cool people. So
that's fucking awesome.
Did they play the song about Eric Lindros?
Which one is that?
I don't know. There's a hate song about Eric Lindros in that album somewhere.
There's a thing about Eric Lindros, or it's Dave Coulier for another one. So, but I don't.
Oh yeah, Dave Coulier.
Yeah, so
cut it out, man.
Just cut it out. But other than that, since Josh saw Jagged Little Pill, we're going to all tell you guys, all listeners out there, what you ought to know about Crown Jewel 2023 that happened on November 4th. We're going to kind of kick it off with a couple of different matches that we're going to go through. The first one we're going to start with Solo Sikoa versus John Cena. Now, this wasn't a great match, gentlemen. I know that we talked a little bit before the podcast started about the whole situation. With how it went. Basically, match was pretty one-sided. John Cena did his comeback thing at one point, and then basically Solo Sikoa spiked him about 15 times in the throat to end the match. and everybody in Saudi started the whole "Thank you, John" chants, and it kind of looks at this point that it might have been John Cena's last match. Now, it didn't say anything. He never said anything at the end. He did one of those long, glaring looks. Now, Chris, when you look at something like this, John Cena's like 50 years old. That's not an exaggeration. I'm pretty sure he is 50 years old. He's basically got a bald spot in the back of his head. Nothing wrong with that. We're all getting old. But I think at the end, is this John Cena's last match for you when you think about it, without him saying anything? Or do you think that he's going to do something that has a bigger send-off?
Yeah, I think I don't think that's his last match. I think when his last match comes, it's going to be marketed as his last match. And just a question to you guys about like the Saudi crowd: how much do they know, and how much do they follow?
They knew all of the theme music when people came in. They sang Seth's theme music. They sang Cody's. I would honestly say I don't know if. I'm going to assume that they know stuff about the dirt sheets, maybe not as much as we do. I don't know. Somebody can probably let us know via email if they can, but they definitely follow the product and the brand from what we've seen, because they literally were the ones that started the "Thank you, John" chants at the end.
Well, I guess that partnership is working if they're making new fans who actually follow the product. Small arena, though,
A little bit. But...
John Cena's last match, I would assume it's going to be marketed pretty big, and it's got to be a SummerSlam, WrestleMania, Royal Rumble match, right? Like you can't. These are kind of the shows that they kind of throw together, which is usually happen. I think it would be someone other than Solo he would go out on. I think it's going to be a bigger name. Like, honestly, LA Knight to put his shoulders on the mat for the last time would do it for me.
Yeah, you know what? It's kind of interesting to see how the whole thing's going to play out, because it definitely doesn't feel like it's the last one for me. So, Josh, I'm going to ask you kind of, I got a question for you, then I'll ask you both a question related to pretty much John Cena. That'll kind of be a more broader question. But when you kind of look at this, and he doesn't look the same in the ring, Josh. He looked really slow. He looked like he had to get ready. He was talking 2 weeks ago on SmackDown about how he had to get ready and in match shape. Do you think if he does his retirement match like Chris is talking about on one of the grander stages, do you think that he's going to have a build-up for it? And if you could pick anyone on the current roster that he could finish his career with and have a retirement match with the current roster, who do you think that would be? Because I don't see him in a world title picture at any point. I don't think anybody else does. I think that's a given, but who would be strong enough to carry him a match? Like kind of Chris goes with LA Knight. Who would you say at that point?
Oh, I mean, if it's going to be his like real retirement match, this is my last match. I don't know, maybe you go someone historic. Who did he have a huge past with? He must have feuded with Brock Lesnar a bunch. Like, I know he's not going to be going on a fucking 40-minute banger or anything like that. It's going to be, like 10 to 15 minutes at the most. Probably we'll have, some high spots, some humor, stuff like that. But I could see him going with, like I said, like a Brock Lesnar. Even, why not Roman Reigns? He's the GOAT versus GOAT. I'm not saying like I like that, but I think that if you're going to give John Cena, who is like arguably the man who carried your company for a big chunk, who made WWE what it was after the Attitude Era, and I think that you give him the biggest match that he can have. Solo Sikoa can't be his last match. It's not that there's anything wrong with that. Him getting beat up by Solo Sikoa, getting destroyed by that, gives Solo Sikoa that rub. But he didn't need it. Like John Cena's not expected to win that match, and I agree. He looked sloppy, but the actor strike's over, so he can be gone for years. And fun fact, he's 46.
No, I thought he was in his 50s.
Not quite. Nope, 46.
It's a beautiful show notes. Good eye, Josh. I appreciate that. That's for sure.
That means that we're old.
Yeah.
Because we could have went to high school with him.
I got 6 years to get a John Cena body so I can go on Jimmy Fallon one day, but I doubt that'll happen. Now, my fact or fiction that I have for both of you. Now, there's so many different styles of wrestling and so many different brands that are out there. You're looking at AEW, we're talking about New Japan, we're talking about Japanese strong style, we're talking about all this, and this question is very subjective. to what we've seen. But what we've watched John Cena since the Attitude Era going through it. My question to you, and we'll start with Chris with this one, is John Cena the greatest of all time?
No, I don't think so. His promos are okay. Like, I don't mind them. Like, he comes and he makes it interesting, but I like his wrestling style. I've never been about it. I don't think we watch John Cena to watch him wrestle in the ring. No, he's not even in my top 10.
Wow. So greatest of all time, Chris says no. Let me change the spectrum of this question to Josh. Is he the greatest sports entertainer of all time?
Maybe. No, probably not. I think that he's in the top 3. I mean, for if sports entertainer. I would say that, like, for wrestling, he is the GOAT branded wrestler. He is, the wrestler, like the consummate company man. I think he when you're talking GOAT, it's hard to, because, like, our pod is like wrestling heavy, and like, if you're gonna say he's the GOAT, like, if his in-ring performance isn't great, then I'm just not sure that we would get him as the number 1. But I think that for how popular he was for how long, and how, like, him being in the front of the company for as long as he was definitely the face of the company. And I think that, gives him reason to be considered one of the GOATs, because, they put the company on his back for a while.
Absolutely.
Turn him heel before he goes.
The only time the only time he was ever heel was when he was basically that starting out with his rap character there on SmackDown. But fans just ended up loving him. But I have to agree with everything you kind of both said. I think as a wrestler, John Cena understands the craft. I think he's a good storyteller. I don't think he's the greatest wrestler on planet Earth. I think he's very strong. He can do a lot of things that a lot of people can't. But I think the thing that hurts him is the thing that people loved about him the most. It was the 5-knuckle shuffle into the AA, into the STF. It was just stuff like that where he never really had to change his character for those moves at any point. And I think that's when Chris made a great point. He's like, turn him heel. I think if he would have turned heel, he would have had to make some of those adjustments to stay relevant. But I think for as long as his career goes, he was one of the only guys that never really had to reinvent himself. He was basically the same person over and over. And, he was great with kids. And I totally agree with what Josh said. He is the number 1 branded wrestler on planet Earth. Like, when you look at a lot of the stuff, when it comes to the stuff that he has and how he performed and how he did everything, that's the reality of what it is. And I think that's what puts him in. Josh, I think you said it best. I have him in the top 3 for sports entertainers. I have The Rock first, and then I have to put Triple H up there, because I thought he did an amazing job for years and years and years. And it doesn't mean that anybody below that top 3 is bad. They're not. I mean, we can make a list of 15 and people would be all over the place. But I think the 3 that you really talk about from our era that we watched in our generation, and like kind of just after, I think the Shawn Michaels generation and the Bret Hart generation would have been those 3 guys. It would have been The Rock, it would have been Triple H, and it would have been, John Cena. Those were the 3 that were there. So really interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see. I really hope he does get an appropriate send-off at some point, but we'll just have to wait and see what happens after that. Now, for basically the second match of the night that we're going to talk about from Crown Jewel is we're going to talk a little bit about everybody's favorite Prime superstar with Logan Paul. So we'll talk about him a little bit. And he was in a match for the United States Championship with Rey Mysterio and actually performed pretty well. He actually won the match. There was a little bit of controversy at the end, a little bit of a potential swerve or something that could be coming later on. But that's something that we're going to kind of keep an eye out for, and we'll ask with the questions. But Chris, we talked about Logan Paul and how he had some losses before on the previous podcast and what he needed to do to be a legitimate superstar. Nobody was doubting his in-ring work. In fact, he's far ahead on his in-ring work in a lot of cases that we've seen. based on his performance in the match and going back over it, is this a well-deserved victory, and is he worthy of carrying the WWE United States Championship at this point in his career?
I strongly think so. I think he's only wrestled stars, and he's taken the losses, and they wouldn't keep putting him up against stars if it looked bad. And like I said when I texted you guys, if he saved Rey Mysterio, then like if he's that far ahead, like ring psychology wise, I think he's got a great career. I think putting the belt on him is good. Like he draws. He is so like he's a big name. I think it's a good start. Let's see how he does with the US Championship. Let's see how he does with the belt on him. Let's see if the crowd kind of, embraces it. Is he going to go heel? He's mostly been heel, so I imagine he's going to kind of keep that. But yeah, I think he's like a Kurt Angle. Like he got in the ring and he just had it right away. Like it's just something that came to him. He's super athletic. Like he does a lot of really great moves. And he snaps them off. He's not dangerous in the ring. We saw him save Rey Mysterio's neck. Like I was telling you guys, I said, like if that's on purpose, like he really gets it. He really gets it. So yeah, and there's probably a reason why these guys want to work with him. If he's that good of a worker and he's safe and he protects the other guys, and he said he's retiring from boxing. He's full-time wrestling. So I'd like to see it. I'd like to see him there every week. And if you put a belt on him, I assume he's not Brock Lesnar. So I assume he's going to be there more often. But I'm interested. It's got me because I think he's got the look. I think even once he starts learning how to do pure on wrestling promos, like he's holding his own, even though he's not 2 seasons in it. But yeah, I am patiently awaiting like what his whole career looks like in wrestling.
I think a lot of people play characters, and I think Logan Paul's just like really playing himself. And I think that's the funniest part here, because I think a lot of wrestlers that start out in developmental, they don't have a lot of acting ability. They've been, athletic people their whole lives, but they don't have that charisma. And he's got something a little bit different. He doesn't have to create a character here. He's been behind a mic. He has a podcast. He's not, he's used to being in the public eye. He's used to having all these things that are kind of happening when they go through the motion with it, right? But I think when you're looking at it all the way through, he is comfortable, and I have to agree with what you saw. Like, he was great at saving Rey in the ring. He's an athletic hand. He does a lot of stuff that's really, really good when you kind of go through the motions with it. And I mean, I had nothing bad to say about his match. I actually anticipated him to walk out with the title, because that's what it felt like. There was a couple little things that happened, and Josh, I don't know how much you saw. Is this a match that you really saw in full when you were going through? Now, so with this match, when we're going through, I'm gonna kind of steer away from Logan, but I'll get your thoughts in a second. But what are your thoughts on the kind of what happened at the end with the brass knuckles, where Santos Escobar steals the brass knuckles off the guy, catches the guy, hops the fence, and then basically puts them back on, the ring so that Logan can get them to use them. When you look at a lot of it, is this like a swerve thing? Is this going to be something that you think is going to lead into Rey and Santos going at it? And is this something that's going to kind of take Rey off the shelf a little bit and let Santos Escobar run with the LWO?
Yeah, we were joking about it when I was watching it, and I was like, oh, he comes out and makes the save, and then conveniently places the brass knuckles right back on the ring. And I think it opens the opportunity for them to be able to say that, Rey Mysterio needs a feud with Santos Escobar, but it could just be like it's not part of the story, but like it's just kind of funny and it's ironic. But yeah, it would be interesting. I agree with everything that Chris has said. Logan Paul is very impressive. I'd be interested to see how he does wrestling week to week. Like, I would like to see him in a program with somebody and wrestling every week to actually show that he can wrestle and not just do a pay-per-view. Because if he's just doing pay-per-views, then he's got 4 weeks to prep with the guy. And, I want to know that he's actually able to do the work as opposed to just being able to plan one match, because that's kind of what the story is that's the question, is like, can he be a full-time wrestler? And I don't want to be like, just like Chris is saying, is like, I would not like to see him be like Brock Lesnar or Roman Reigns. Like, he's probably going to be there every week, but I think that for us to believe him as
what are you doing?
As like a real long-term wrestler, he's got to put in the dates. He doesn't have to do 200 days a year, but like he should be wrestling at least 3 times a month.
I have to agree with that. I think like one of the unique things that we're seeing here is that he's kind of been bred to kind of have a strong go. And you look at some of the other people, like I love what he said at the very end to Rey Mysterio, where he walked up to Rey Mysterio and basically said to him at the end, he said, "I just did what I had to do." And that was actually really interesting when we went through it, because it's actually a vet thing that he actually said there. And Ray's like, "You know what you did, blah, blah, blah." And there'll probably be a rematch at some point. And that'll be great to see, but there's more of the story that needs to be told, which is going to be great to see, and I think it's really interesting. But moving forward with Logan, I think he's a hand that could really develop into something big. And we talked about the early contract and what it brings, and with Prime and Prime Energy and everything that they have going on, being with the company that they're in, and they're looking at a lot of those things. It's a win-win for both groups. Everybody wins with it. So the more power they give to Logan and the more he shoots up the ranks, the better it's going to be for business, the better it's going to be for social media. And I think it's just time will tell if he can really slot into that upper echelon of what the WWE is offering for their product, right? So other than that, I think that's pretty much it for Logan at this point. We're going to kind of talk about the main event of the evening, which was kind of a unique one. So it's Roman Reigns against LA Knight. So Roman Reigns, obviously he retains. He's going to pick back up. That was for the undisputed WWE Universal Championship. So Roman comes out on top, and I don't know. I don't think any of us really thought that the title was going to change hands on this PLE. I really don't think it was ever going to happen. But LA Knight kind of had a strong performance here. They kind of played him off like it's his first big, main event, or his first big title shot that he's had in WWE, and that the pressure could get to him. And I think Michael Cole did an amazing job really trying to sell that, and the announcer did a great job trying to sell it all the way through the match. I personally felt it ended a little bit abruptly, but Chris, was there anything here that was really out of expectation? Like, did LA Knight even have a shot here, or is this something that where he's a build-up going up towards WrestleMania or towards SummerSlam of next year to potentially hold this belt?
There were rumors, like there were a lot. I read some rumors but there was no source to it, so I didn't think. I think I texted you guys like, have you guys read any of this? Do you actually think this can happen? I think Crown Jewel is one thing. Like, they gave Logan Paul a title shot. Like, you can test somebody at Crown Jewel, right? So they don't take it as seriously as they would to continue a storyline, because LA Knight's not going to wrestle. He's not going to wrestle Roman Reigns again. But I think that what they do with these shows in some of the main events, giving these people you're giving them experience. I mean, I know LA Knight's been he's been in main events in Impact, but that's totally different than WWE. And the fact that he performed well, obviously none of us, we knew he wasn't going to win, right? So, but I do think it's good to put him in that position. I think he deserves it. He's worked hard, and hopefully that's not his last main event. But yeah, it gives them a chance to kind of put a measuring stick on people. They can put somebody against Roman Reigns. You know they're not going to win, but you can see how they perform. You can see how they perform in front of the crowd. Can they handle the pressure of a main event? Will they be the same in ring? It was way better than his last PLE match, so that's good.
I think you have to have these tests for a lot of people, and I have to agree. You know what? It's something that doesn't get to happen too often, because it's kind of like, I don't know. It's a little bit different with AEW when you're kind of looking at AEW, because the fans have to pay such an kind of a big price tag to get to one of those pay-per-views, right? So they have to knock it out of the park, where WWE can kind of play with their programming in and out, And, with the 12 PLEs a year, they can kind of tinker with a couple of them to see what happens. Now, I don't necessarily agree with it, because if you want a PLE and it's premium, you want to really knock it out of the park. But I do agree to have these matches. They're important. They're part of development. You're trying to put somebody in that spot. And I think it's not about having one guy in the slot. It's trying to have 4 or 5 potential guys that could step in at any moment if needed, that could headline a pay-per-view. And I think that was what WWE's strong point was a long time ago, and they don't have that anymore, right? So Josh, I'll ask you, you think of what the WWE had before, you had Triple H, you had The Undertaker, you even had Kane, The Big Show, you had Chris Jericho, you had all these other guys that could step in on a whim and become a world champion if they needed to step up, and that would have been a headline draw. Now, with Roman's title shot and with what we're seeing with a couple guys, we're seeing that lack of development. Do you even think at this point, I think the odds are still yes, but do you think that LA Knight is going to be considered for a title shot? Because look what we've seen with Sami Zayn. Look what we've seen with some other people. And even with this Cody finishing the story, we don't even know if we're going to get the payoff for that. Do you think that there's a chance here that he might not even get that title shot, or might not even get that title to get the ball and run with it?
It's hard to say that with how well he's doing that it doesn't happen. I think that if he continues to get the pops that he gets, it's just, again, kind of things that, I've said, if they get to choose how much TV time he gets, we've already seen how far Sami Zayn's fallen since his organic, being that organic draw. That had they continued it, they could, not to say that he's not getting attention. It's just that they didn't strike when the iron's hot. And so I think that there's a chance there might be more of a chance where this is more of a build up for him to take a Seth Rollins title, take that title instead when they do the draft next year and have him drafted to the other brand, and maybe, because I don't see him as being the one to beat Roman Reigns, and then, would he be the one to beat the one who beat Roman Reigns? I don't know. I just kind of worry that WWE is in the habit now of having these prolonged champions, right? And it's even trickling down to the Intercontinental champ. It's in that championship as well, which makes that championship more, prominent. But then it also takes away the opportunity for those young up and coming guys that you could put the IC title on them 2 or 3 times in a year, and then it leaves them, kind of in waiting for the world champion. But you still have those guys, like you said, with the Undertaker. It's just that you don't have those guys because they're just not putting the title on them. That's the thing. They just haven't chosen to do that. Yeah. Their guys are there. Kevin Owens is that guy, but they just refuse to put the title on him.
He's
Drew
always
McIntyre,
been that guy, yeah.
Same thing. Those guys, they could do it. They just don't write it like that. Roman Reigns has been the story. The Bloodline's been the story. It's just kind of I don't know how the fans put up with it when the match finishes every 3 months that he has a singles match, or every 4 months that he has a singles match. It's the same finish, and it's okay, enough is enough. Is it going to be WrestleMania this year? Please make it WrestleMania this year so we have a different story, because it's the same finish all the time.
Yeah,
I just want to jump in. Sorry, Matt.
All good.
So if you kind of look at Roman Reigns, once you're in a storyline with him, you're hot. Once you get out of that storyline with him, because Sami Zayn was who's been hotter than Sami Zayn, and then all of a sudden he's off the storyline, and yeah, you're right. He's just dropping. He's just falling. They tried to put the tag titles on them. Still, you don't get, unless he's, because right now Roman Reigns is running it. Unless you're wrestling Gunther, yeah, Gunther, right?
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah, so unless you're wrestling him or you're in a storyline with Roman Reigns right now, I feel like it's hard for all those other guys to get over.
I have to disagree with you a little bit. I've watched Raw the last couple weeks, and I think with Sammy's move over and Sammy switching over, he's actually getting back to that prominent level, because he gave a really good promo on Monday night. And yeah, I agree with you in the sense that if you're looking at the timeline from when everything happened at last year's WrestleMania, like to before an Elimination Chamber to now, yeah, he's definitely dropped. But I can start seeing it kind of tick back up now that he's not with Kevin Owens, right? And I think even like if you go to WrestleMania where they won the tag titles, it was great. It was kind of like, okay, boys, you worked hard. Here you go. Let's put you together. We'll give you a main event. We'll give you a WrestleMania moment, right? But I think there's more to this story for Sammy to really be told, and I think like he's gonna be obviously a main player on Raw, because now they're really developing on Raw kind of a more of a system. Like the biggest problem that you have on Raw now is, other than Sammy, you know, I don't know if Cody's over there, if Cody switched over, I can't remember, but you have basically Sammy. You're gonna have Cody a little bit, and you'll have Jey Uso, and then you have the Judgment Day, and it's like, who do you have after that that can really kind of step into those things? There's a couple guys that are. I mean, you look at that IC, whatever it was, the IC number one contenders match, and that kind of looked. You had some good names in there too, but you need a little bit more to go through. But Sammy looked like really kind of engaged, really empowered on Monday night when he gave that promo, and that brought back kind of those goosebump moments to when he was giving them before at Elimination Chamber. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think it's going to move him into an upper echelon, but I don't know if he gets there. I mean, we're looking at these scenarios where, you know, what do you, like, I almost feel bad for the person after that wins the title after Roman Reigns, because if they don't have, like, at least a 6-month reign, it's going to look like a complete failure, right? And it's like in these modern times in wrestling where you have these 12 premium live events or pay-per-views that are going on a year, and you have to have some title changes at those. Like, that's just the modernization of pro wrestling. Like, we don't need to go back on, like, okay, I can understand giving Gunther the Intercontinental title for, you know, a year and a half just to get Honky Tonk Man off the books, but like, is the goal?
I think
Go ahead.
Sorry. I think what, like, because usually the IC is your springboard to a championship. Maybe they're just leaving it on him to kind of develop everything to get, and then have him lose and then get him in the storyline.
Yeah, you know what? I had a topic for next week's that I forgot, and I thought about this week, and you know, the topic didn't come to fruition this week, and that's fine because I totally forgot about it. But I think something that we should talk about next week, and I hope I remember to write it down or somebody reminds me, is to just basically talk about how the infrastructure of these title belts and these companies are really affecting storylines negatively, and what could happen. Because we're talking about, like to me, a U.S. champion should have to defend it on American soil. Like, I mean, you don't have to have the U.S. title defended in Saudi Arabia. Like, you should have your Universal champion and your, you know, like, your world champion, have those belts defended in something like Saudi Arabia. You go to Europe and you go to these other places, like go to Australia, your IC champion should be the one that's doing that too, right? But like if we had a policy where we didn't have to defend the US belt anywhere else but in the US, it'd be great, right? And it's like, it's the role of, and you guys, like, I always said, you know what my favorite belt was in WCW? It was the World Television Championship, because it was defended every week. And you can get invested in whoever was there, right?
And that's the point
Josh,
of it.
what are your thoughts on that? Like, I mean, we'll talk about this next week, but I just thought, like, maybe we could talk about it now because of how crazy it gets.
Like, on how where the belts are defended, I kind of agree. Like, if you call it the U.S. title, I find that, like, the Crown Jewel is just like, it's a throwaway pay-per-view. They're putting on a show and they're bringing the biggest stars because those guys are fucking trillionaires.
Yeah.
Like, they gotta bring in. And I think that I was looking at the venue and it looks like it was more of like a stadium than anything. I don't even know if it was small. It was just like the way that the stage was set up. But yeah, I don't know. I think, like, the AEW pay-per-view schedule is a little bit better because it allows the stories to develop, and you're not just like ramming things down your throat. But yeah, they made a lot of money just going to Saudi Arabia.
For sure.
Whether or not they put on a good show.
Yeah, it's definitely a promotional event, right? And it's definitely treated as such, and they try to treat it as a regular pay-per-view, and I don't think it really works that way. Anyways, we'll come back to this about the belts later on. We'll figure out this infrastructure that I had an idea for that I thought was interesting, but it doesn't necessarily work all the time. But I say in both both places bring back have a world television champion. I think it's a great idea. With that being said, we're going to take our thoughts away from Crown Jewel here. We're going to move into kind of some rumor mills, stuff that really ties into kind of like some of the AEW talk. One of the big things that we're hearing on the internet right now is that basically Will Ospreay is coming to the end of his contract with New Japan Pro Wrestling, which is going to basically make him at this point the biggest free agent in professional wrestling in 2023. And the sweepstakes have already kind of going. We're hearing that Impact is a place that would really like to have Will Ospreay. We're actually hearing, TNA Wrestling. I apologize. Impact is dead. It's TNA Wrestling. I might say Impact a few more times, but we'll have a counter on that. But basically, Will Ospreay has a blank check, in my opinion, to go wherever he wants to go. And I don't know if you guys agree with that statement, but we're going to switch it up. AEW, we'll start with Josh. Josh, Will Ospreay, we watched him live. You've seen his work on television. You've seen it in person. You've seen it on PLEs. I personally believe that I think for myself, he's probably in the conversation of the top 3 best wrestlers on the planet. Where do you think he ends up? And my first question to really kick it off is, can he go anywhere? Like, is he really that good? He can just go anywhere he wants, right, at this point?
Oh, yeah, for sure. He can go anywhere. But I think that he ends up in one of the 2 major promotions. I think that Tony has enough money to throw pretty much at anybody. And that if MJF is kind of up in the air and it doesn't happen, if he does end up in WWE, that Will Ospreay is a perfect substitute. Different character, of course, but I think that if WWE wants him and they want to pony up the money, he goes to WWE. If it's about money, that's where he goes. But if it's about wrestling, then I think he goes to AEW. There's no chance he ends up at TNA because one of the 2 major companies will pay him. I mean, okay, if he ends up at TNA, I know he's been there doing the thing, whatever, but I think that ultimately he'll end up all elite, most likely, but if he signed with WWE, I would not be surprised.
So, Chris, you kind of nobody can really see on our because we're watching on screens, but you kind of gave a glance with the TNA thing because there's been a lot of news saying that he would be happy. In fact, he just wrestled there. He wrestled Speedball Mike Bailey, and that match was really, really good. If you did get a chance to watch it, really, really technical. Mike Bailey's actually up there as one of probably the most technical wrestlers and probably most fun to watch wrestlers in the world today. And that's a major coup for TNA when they picked him up in the signing. But the knock on him is he's a little bit small. Anyways, besides that point, they had a great match. But Chris, you seem to think that with TNA that he has a shot of actually going there. Do you think that this is a high shot of him going there, or is this just something where you're just kind of like you're reading kind of the rumor mill and you're kind of adhering to that? What are your honest thoughts about this situation?
No, I don't totally disagree with Josh. I just think there's more like he's testing the waters with TNA. Like he's been there a little bit recently, right? I think like once his NJPW contract ends, like he gets to go anywhere he wants. He gets to wrestle in London multiple times. If he goes to WWE, he's going to wrestle in London once a year. I think TNA, if they're smart and they're really talking about like rebranding as TNA, I think they should pony up the money and really try to take a run at him. I think so, but WWE, he might try it. I hope if he does go to WWE, I hope he doesn't sign like a 6-year contract. I hope he signs something short term because I don't think he's going to like it, and I don't think I'd love to see him and Seth Rollins though. I would love that, but AEW is probably, I agree with Josh. AEW is where I'm putting the most of my odds on.
I think he's playing the field pretty well right now. We keep hearing about Seth Rollins. I think, in my opinion, the WWE is probably the place that he least, probably the place that has the less odds of him going. And the biggest reason that kind of happens at this point when we're kind of having this conversation is that, you're also forgetting that he has a stake in Revolution Pro, right? Up in England. And so when you're looking at that and you're talking about kind of the English game, AEW and TNA allows him to kind of get back. And I think one of the reasons why I'm not throwing out TNA is that he has the ability to make a deal with Rev Pro and TNA to kind of do shows across the globe at this point. I don't know if he would have as much with AEW. Now, I'm pretty sure if he had a contract and he asked Tony, Tony would probably be willing to do it. Send some stars over there, do whatever you're going to do. Do that around Wembley time when you go across. But I think that you could have more frequent matches with TNA and having set up and getting more people out of his school in that from Rev Pro into TNA on a regular basis and having people do their journey that way. So I think that they're the front runners. I think the WWE, the problem there is that there's less flexibility. I think, Chris, you're right. I don't think he's going to like it. Also, on a personal level, he's diagnosed autistic. So that plays if he's not comfortable with where he's going to be in those areas, it's not going to be the same, right? So I think that could be a reason why he's been with New Japan for so long. But he's gaining more comfort now wrestling in North America, and that was something that he never had a long time ago. We didn't see him come into North America a lot back when he first started with New Japan, right? And now he's talking about his body.
No, bruv.
Yeah, he's no bruv. Now he's talking about his body breaking down. He's talking about a lot of these things that are kind of coming up, and there's a lot less time in his career than what people actually think. This guy's not wrestling till 50, and based on his style, he never will. So I think this decision is a really important decision for him. It'd be really interesting to see where he goes. Now, where does he rank as like probably one of the best wrestlers on the planet? For me, he's in the top 5. He's going to have a great match. He's going to have better matches with people in WWE and better matches with people in AEW than he will in TNA, in my opinion. And we've already seen the type of matches that he can have in AEW. The question is, where does he go from there? Right? So it'll be really interesting to see what happens with that basically moving forward. So that should be an interesting concept, and hopefully we get to see some Will Ospreay in North America soon, because he is a peach to watch, let me tell you. Now, what else were we talking about in regards to AEW, guys? I kind of forgot some of the topics here. I'm a terrible host.
I don't know. We've already run 40 minutes.
I was trying to think here.
Tag teams? Tag team stuff?
Yeah, there was something else that we were talking about before that, too, I think. But I was going to do the tag team one last, but I can't remember. Let me hold up and let me just see here if I can find my quick notes. Man, this is real professional, so good for us. Yeah, I think what we were talking. Kind of one of the other things we were talking about is kind of getting ready for Full Gear going into on. I think it's November 18th or 19th. I think it's the 18th. In Inglewood, California. Some of the cards already been made. We got MJF wrestling twice again, just like he did in Wembley. But one of the matches that kind of really stands out there, there's a couple matches that really do. We got Cassidy and Moxley going again. We got Hangman Page and Swerve Strickland 2 happening. We got some Sting and some Darby Allin and some Adam Copeland against Christian Cage, Luchasaurus, and Nick Wayne. And there's some other matches there. But one that we want to talk about is the newly formed Kenny Omega and Chris Jericho tag team, beautifully called the Golden Jets. Basically challenging the Young Bucks and to a match on this card. And it's got a kind of an interesting stipulation where basically if Jericho and Omega win, they basically get the Young Bucks World Tag Team Championship shot that they basically won. And if the Young Bucks win, the Jets must disband as a team. So, Josh, when you're looking at this match, is this an upper echelon match? I mean, we were talking a couple weeks ago about the tag team division and how, we're going to see FTR and the Young Bucks 3, blah, 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 and how it was kind of boring to us because it was for a title. And now we're kind of seeing this kind of interesting thing happen where we don't really get to see a stip for a title opportunity. Do you think that this match has the ability to really create a storyline for the next couple months that will be sustainable for Jericho or Omega? Or do you think that this is going to lead them down a path where they fight? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think you could go either way. I really don't. At this point, I can't tell. Do they create the Golden Jets to just break them up immediately? I think, if this was WWE, I'd say they kind of will wait for a crowd reaction and go with it and see will keep them going for a while. I'd kind of like to see the story go a little bit farther, and then that could create have a feud with the Bucks, and not to say split up the Elite, but it's like Hangman is kind of off and doing his storyline with Swerve. I'm anticipating a third and final fight after this one, whatever happens. So I think that the story will continue, and that the Golden Jets are going to win. I think that that's the way it's going to go. Give them the title shot and let them run with it a little bit. The story's been interesting. I think Jericho. I think it's time for him to start getting down that retirement train. And not to say that I still think that his in-ring work isn't terrible. It's just not what it was. But I would say that I enjoy his wrestling more than I enjoyed he shall not be named. So.
Chris, what do you want to add here?
Oh, no, I was just refocusing my camera.
So anyways, my question for you then, Chris, is going forward as you kind of look at this matchup, and we'll kind of piggyback off Josh there. We talk about Chris Jericho's in-ring work and, his age getting up there and his lack of mobility that's kind of come through. I kind of compare his physicality being diminished a little bit, kind of like what we're seeing with Matt Hardy a little bit, where it seems to be a very strong lack of mobility that's happening. And I think somebody said it on the podcast before, like the minute he can't do the moonsault is the minute he should hang it up. But it feels like it's definitely getting to that point. Like, I'm not denying that the guy's in great shape, but the bones are starting to kind of tighten up. The muscles are not contracting like they used to be. So question is when do you think is an appropriate time frame to Chris to wrap it up at this point? And do you think that the Golden Jets really do have a shot against the Young Bucks and that they can move forward as a tag team on a decent timetable?
Yeah, I definitely think the Golden Jets have a shot, and I think we're seeing a lot that Jericho is starting to get tagged with people, younger people who can kind of carry a bigger part of the match, who are more technical, who can do high flying things, and Jericho's kind of there he's kind of turning more into like a brawler, and he does he can barely do his drop kick when he's really close to not being able to do that too, the drop kick off the turnbuckle. So I mean, I think he knows it. I think I saw a thing today that he's 53. That's getting pretty old.
Not 46.
I mean, yeah, like obviously don't step on Sting's toes. Like, this is Sting's time for the legend to retire. So I think after Sting retires, I think I think the best idea would be to kind of put Jericho in something like that, where there's kind of like the farewell tour and like he has his last year. I think if Sting's retiring, I think Jericho should be next. And I mean, it's hard. You love Jericho, right? You love Jericho, but yeah, it's not as fun watching him wrestle anymore.
No, it's not. And I think he's always going to kind of be around in some capacity, whether it's with his band, whether it's with a podcast, or like he's not going to never not be around professional wrestling, right? Like, that's just the way it is. So I think it's really unique when you kind of look at him and all the hats that he can bring to a table and to a promotion when you kind of look at what he does. The podcast helps build stuff for what he does with his podcast. There's lots of things that he has the ability to do, and I don't think it'll be his last hurrah. I think he'll be around, and he kind of might be like this, I wrestle one match a year type deal, and that's okay if he does that for the next few years, like after he retires, right? It doesn't matter. He'll still be able to do some of it, but just not on the full capacity that he's doing right now. He's to me, it seems like this is like he's always taken some time off and, run its course, take some time off, then come back, and always have the ability to kind of adapt that way. And I think we might even be close to having him do that again, where he just might need a break for a couple months just to get off the road, right? So, tough to say. I mean, when you're looking at the quality of this match and you kind of look at it, I love the stip. I think the stip provides so much to this match. I love the banter back and forth, how they were calling the Young Bucks a bunch of whiny bitches, and just kind of looking at all these, nuances in the match. I mean, Kenny's going to carry the workload, I think, for a lot of it. But you know what? The beautiful part about Jericho being in a tag team is that Jericho could probably take a beating for 10 minutes and then let Kenny do the hot tag and run in, right? So that's where kind of that high-flying stuff is going to come in, and Jericho can just kind of stick low to the ground and do the stuff that he normally does. I think it's going to be a really technical, well-told story match when we get to that point. So I'm really hoping it's going to be a banger when we look at it. Going into our last topic for the night, we're not going to talk about MJF and Jay White. What we are going to do is we are going to save that for next week because basically Full Gear is going to be on the 18th. Today we're running, it's basically November 10th. I think we're going to be able to have a really good conversation next week about talking about the Masked Man. We're going to be talking about the 6 people that beat up the Acclaim last week and a lot of stuff like that. I think that's going to headline next week. But one thing we definitely do want to talk about is kind of this, not really a loss of the AEW tag team titles, but we're kind of seeing some really unique things with the tag titles. Where, you know, we're having looking at potentially a 4-way. And how this basically started was me and Chris were talking earlier today, and Chris was like, where the heck is the House of Black? He's like, I haven't seen them in forever. And I'm like, they've been showing up, and it looks like they've been kind of putting their hands looking at Starks and Big Bill. So they're not going after the Acclaimed here. The Acclaimed kind of made a shot at them, for the Trios title. Made a comment there on Dynamite. But I really do think that the House of Black is going toward the tag team titles. And what we kind of want to talk about is, Josh, when you look at, the House of Black and you look at Buddy Murphy or Murphy and you look at, Brody King and you look at, Malachi Black in this whole,
Alistair.
Alistair Black.
Oh, right,
Malachi,
right.
Alistair Black. Malachi Black.
Malachi.
There we go. So we're looking at Malachi Black, and we're looking at this group. Are they viable contenders to the tag team titles? Like, do you think, like, they've been World Trios champions? Like, I mean, obviously the first thing that comes to mind is yes, but do you find that one of them gets left out, or do you feel that they're going to have to go to, like, a freebird rule for the tag titles for them to be really relevant, to have the tag belts with that group if they were to win it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they can do that for sure. I think any one of them could also be a singles wrestler. I think that Malachi Black, I mean, is obviously the leader of the group, so he's a clear choice to be a singles wrestler. But Brody King, come on, like, I mean, he could be the heavyweight champion. Like, he's that impactful that I think that he could be there too. So it's just that there's so many people competing for it, and I think that the group is, I like that they're not going back for the trios because it allows the Acclaim to have it for a little while, and I think that they'll recompete for the trios eventually and run that division. I kind of like their, like, what they do. They don't need it. They don't need a title on them to get over, and I think that's one of the things that I hate about AEW the most is that everybody's got a goddamn title. And also, like, I'm kind of like, not to say that, like, Chris, I think it was you and I that were talking about it, like how ROH belts are being defended on AEW programming, and like it's really, like, it should be AEW focused. Like, ROH titles should be defended on ROH, and I agreed with you on that one. So I think that I don't know. Maybe they'll win. I doubt it though. I'm not gonna put money on it.
Well, one of the things I was even thinking about, like, when you mentioned that about the ROH titles and everything that was going on, you talk about Samoa Joe, and Samoa Joe just recently dropped his the ROH television title, right? And basically just dropped it and said that they weren't going to do it anymore, and then automatically he was in the next. He was in the next promo with MJF trying to get on the MJF train for the world title. So it looks like he's trying to focus in on that. So I think what we're kind of seeing is we're probably not going to see the ROH titles be defended as much. And I think when you put them on AEW stars, they're going to get defended on AEW TV, right? So I'm kind of hoping that MJF actually does lose to the Guns, just because I think it would be good for the Guns to be on ROH TV and actually be defending them there, because I think that's going to help their development for what they're trying to do. Mind you, they're one of the biggest stables that we have right now, which is fantastic. But on an aside, Chris, you have a question?
Yeah, I like, you kind of get it when he bought ROH, like why you would defend those titles on AEW TV. There's a lot more people watching AEW. but I get it's kind of detrimental to it, right? Because like, why are you defending a different
100%.
promotion's belts? Like, yeah.
And I think what it kind of brings to is, yeah, it does bring down. And on top of that, when you're kind of doing ROH and that crossover with AEW, then it kind of makes Josh's topic and what we've talked about earlier with how many, like, how many titles do people have? Then there's even more titles, and it just becomes irrelevant at that point. But back to the House of Black situation, when we're kind of talking about, I want to talk a little bit about Brody King. And you know what? We haven't seen a lot of him. And he is probably one of the most unique wrestlers that AEW has that is, you know, not really visible to every single person as of yet. My question to you, Chris, when you're kind of going through is Brody King right now the most underutilized talent that AEW has?
Yeah, all you have to do is you see his finisher one time, you're a fan, right? And like, he's stoic. He's really good at what he does. I think he's a really good worker for a big guy. I think he can actually move pretty well. And then you see that finisher, and it's like you're hooked. You want to see it over and over again. It's great. I mean, he's kind of like, you know, he's secondary, right? He's the enforcer to the two smaller guys. So, I mean, so yeah, you're kind of underutilizing him. He's just, if we do the Freebird rule, I have a feeling like the way I would book a Freebird rule is I would do it strategically, right? Like if it's Big Bill and Starks, I would put somebody with Brody King. You want to match that size with the size. And then if it's smaller wrestlers, Brody King would be on the side, right?
Yeah, 100%.
I've been a fan. I didn't know Brody King until he came to AEW, and sometimes like they just throw a wrestler into him and he just does the finisher, and like I don't think anybody should ever I think they should protect that finisher more than any finisher, more than the end of days.
Oh, for sure. And I think like just before we ask that question to Josh in a second, one of the things that I always thought when I looked at probably about a year ago that I thought would be probably one of the craziest stables that you could ever create would be get rid of the Viking Raiders routine and just put those two guys and Brody King together. And that would just be...
They were so good before they went to the WWE.
Yeah, they were unbelievable when they were in NJPW and even on the Indies. And you know what? Then they go and then they really buy in, and now you got this girl being Valhalla, and it's fucking all Nordic and weird. And it's not weird because it's Nordic. It's just weird because it's Vikings on TV, and it doesn't make any sense in professional wrestling, in my opinion. But Josh, back on Brody King, is he the most underutilized talent in AEW?
The most? Oh,
Unless you have somebody else. I mean, if that'd be great to hear if you do have somebody else. But would you say he might be one of them?
Yeah, for sure. I think that I'd like to see him on television more. I think that wasn't there for a while, you know, when Vince came back, that, you know, like what happened with Malachi. I'm not sure. Maybe like, you know, the fact that he was kind of off television for a while, similar to Andrade, you know, like they were off TV, so like their storyline stopped, and like because Brody King and Buddy Matthews didn't have, or Malachi Black was away, that they didn't really have anything going on. I would argue that Buddy Matthews is just as much as underutilized because his skill set and his like physique are awe-inspiring. So like I think that could you imagine him fighting Will Ospreay? Like that would be like, what kind of match would that be? And I know that he's in a like that's the thing, is that you see some of these talents and you're just like that would be awesome. But yeah, Brody King for sure. I think that the big men, like he's another big man, but he's like a different. It's like I don't know. His finisher is one of my favorite to watch. Just the way it ends, it's like it looks so good.
Other than Bam Bam Bigelow's
Greetings from Asbury.
What was it? Greetings from Asbury Park.
Asbury Park, baby.
Same thing. It's so destructive, and we've only seen it a couple times. Well, Steiner used to do it too.
Oh
right?
Yeah, for sure. Well, Steiner had the Steiner screwdriver, right? His was a little different. It was a suplex, like it was a front suplex into the pile driver, right?
And the fall away botch every time he did it. The backflip slam.
Well, probably broke a few necks doing the Steiner screwdriver. That's why he stopped doing it. So, but yeah, like, I mean, great points here. I mean, you know what? When you kind of look, I thought, well, like, something that was really entertaining, and one of the things that I absolutely loved was when Brody King was coming out with Julia Hart when she would wrestle, because it's just, she's so small and he's so big, and he's kind of like, I think that's cool that he kind of went out as like the kind of the manager, the caretaker manager in a way. It was pretty sweet to kind of watch that, but. Yeah, I think I would have to say he's very underutilized for what they do, and I think they can do a lot with him. It's just that gimmick with the House of Black to kind of push it is kind of hard because you have to use all three guys, and it's a dark gothic theme, and those don't normally get over very well unless they're going to be top draw. I mean, the only time we've ever really seen it in mainstream where it was top draw, the two that I think of was like the Corporate Ministry and potentially Raven's Flock, and Raven's Flock wasn't even on the top. They were just top of the ratings for a bit.
The Brood? The Brood?
There, but yeah, that's another one, and that's probably one of the more, didn't even think of that, but that's one of the more successful ones when you kind of think about it. But even the Brood at their time, they still weren't main event level, right?
Oh, I want to jump in
Go
again,
ahead.
sorry. So like jumping off what you said, like the House of Black, like they actually do this gimmick completely right. Like, this is how it should be done every time you do it. Doesn't get stale. It, like, people love them. Their entrance is fire every time. They go in and they just like stare at people and say like, yeah, we're here to do our job. So they run that gimmick like it should be ran. It's fun to watch. I like
It's
them
like
a lot.
lights go off and then lights come on. We're here to fuck shit up. Like, that's what it is. So.
And they just stand there. They stand there. They hold their ground and just stare at them. They're like, "Yeah, we're here to beat you."
Got it. Now, with that being said, our topics are done for the evening. Josh, what slices your salami, man? Throw it into the grinder. Tell us what you got.
Yeah, okay, so you know what really slices my salami?
Right.
When there's no disqualification when weapons are used and the referee sees it. And, you know, like, it's fine when they have a no DQ match. But, you know, I'm of the days where, you know, Eddie Guerrero could pretend to be hit by a weapon and a DQ would happen. So I just, like, it's part of the kayfabe, I think, that I wish they were a little bit more structured and they kept to the rules. It's the same thing that, you know, same with, you know, the tag matches when they're not enforcing the tags, you know, like the 5-second grace period. So, but yeah, so no DQ when weapons are used really slices my salami.
I think that slices all over salami.
That's a really good one, Josh, actually. Because, yeah, like just like Matt was saying with, you know, the U.S. title should be defended on U.S. soil. Like, why do we have rules for matches? It was like, yeah, if you use a chair in its normal match, yeah, you should be disqualified. But we see it all the time. So that was my favorite slices.
Yeah, it's a good one. Bad refereeing and bad logic. Logic. What I always say about professional wrestling is, professional wrestling is illogical. But when you're following anything with rules, the rules have to be logical. Because if not, then it just fucks everything up. It just makes everything convoluted, right? So the rules have to make sense when you're doing it.
The whole point of wrestling is to make something that's unbelievable believable.
Go ahead. I was watching Dynamite just before we went, and I can't remember which match it was, but the wrestler was pinned and his shoulder was up. Like, you know how, like, sometimes he didn't move it up. It was just, it didn't hit the mat. And, you know, like, so when you have a good referee, even though he knows the spots, or he or she knows the spot is supposed to happen, they typically, like, rub their hand underneath the guy's shoulder. Like, they're supposed to actually enforce the rules. And so, yeah, I don't know, when they're not, like, I want to, like, don't let us see behind the curtain that much. Like, we know it's fake, but, like, follow the fake rules. Sure. Come on.
It's a business where one of those, like, where the shoulder's up, we all see it and we know it's up, and you still count it. So now we know it's totally
well,
fake.
it was like one of the things that I watched before we kind of cut it off is like watching the that Royal Rumble with John Cena and Batista when they both went over the top, and then they both kind of landed, and then Vince came out and tore both his quads.
I watched that at least 3 times.
He's like, yeah, Josh is doing it right now. He's doing the Vince McMahon stomp down to the ring because he's pissed off that it happened. It's like who cares? All you had to do was not get mad, restart the match because they both fell perfectly at the same time. All you had to do was restart the match, and you wouldn't have had 2 blown out quads. Like, what an idiot! Like, just keep your cool.
Hit that entrance and Titus O'Neil's entrance into the Royal Rumble.
Yeah, beautiful.
Like some of the most brutal entrances.
Yeah. Billy Gunn used to have the best slides, and he'd almost slide out the other side of the ring.
For sure. He was always all the way across. But anyways, guys, we've crossed the hour mark, which is always a good thing. The banter was great as always, and you know what? With that being said, we're gonna get ready for next week. Next week, we're gonna probably have our full gear preview, get everything ready for that, talk about some of the matches that are coming up for that. But with that being said, wherever you are in the world tonight, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. We all bid you adieu. Bang.
Beats running copacetic. When it all falls down, I hope you don't forget it. Nickel City, son of anarchy, the hype demanded me. Mikey damage, show you amateurs the cost of vanity. So fuck humanity, flowy murder open-handedly. Most of my clique, yo, they come from broken families. The world that been open is coming to a closure. Can't find peace in a world full of soldiers. Can't stop getting older. Up north, we